I'm Giovanni Grevi. I work at the European Policy Center in Brussels, and I'm taking part in the Czernin Security Forum. Resilience is essentially about coping with uncertainty. It is about the ability to absorb sudden shocks and disruptions, to recover from them, and also to reform and to adapt so as to be better prepared to cope with emerging and future challenges. It's important to bear in mind that resilience is a feature, is a quality both of states and societies. Resilient states require well-performing economic systems and societies that are not divided, polarized, or fractured. And it is also difficult to think of resilient societies if state authorities, from the local to different levels of governance, are not able to deliver basic services to citizens, to respond to the needs of citizens, to respond to their demands, or if these authorities are not willing to do so. So the willingness and ability of authorities to respond to citizens' needs is an important component of resilience. Achieving resilience is an approach that requires a very good understanding of different contexts and situations and the different sets of challenges that might threaten resilience over time. So it is context-specific and it requires a tailor-made set of solutions. That means that even if the mix of tools and policies may change, there are some common features that can underpin a set of actions towards strengthening resilience. The first one is the ability to anticipate, the ability to prevent upcoming challenges. That requires a very strong monitoring function over the medium to long term. That, of course, requires knowledge and expertise, and a very good assessment of the ways in which different trends and different potential risks might interact, such as, for example, the combination between climate change and resource scarcity. It also requires flexibility in the way in which policies and instruments are designed so as to be able to mobilize resources and to take decisions effectively to respond to sudden disruptions. And it takes working with others, with partners of the ground who are well placed to understand what are the emerging risks and what are the vulnerabilities that one has to cope with, and also with partners in the international community, not least to be able to mobilize resources jointly towards common goals. Dealing with resilience is important for security in Europe for various reasons. Of course, we live in a very connected world. That means that Europe's security and prosperity depends on open and sustainable flows of services, of goods, of information, of data, of ideas, of people. Now, these flows are very beneficial in many ways, but they also require to be protected against accidents or against malicious behavior. That requires alert, that requires a stronger infrastructure, material, digital infrastructures at all levels. And that also requires an approach that brings together different actors, different stakeholders within societies and countries and at transnational level. So not only public authorities, but also, for example, the private sector. Secondly, resilience is a response to fragility. And fragility is a lack of capacity or a lack of authority or a lack of legitimacy. That is there are many drivers that can lead to fragility. They have to deal with a lack of capacity of governance. They can deal with high levels of corruption. They can deal with have to do with dysfunctional economies, lack of diversification, lack of investment. It can be about strong demographic pressures in a context of limited resources. Addressing all of these different factors requires, of course, an integrated approach, requires a number of policy tools coming together, but again in a pretty targeted and effective way to anticipate those factors of fragilities which can then in turn over time lead to destabilization or disorder. And that is important also for Europe if this action is taken, for example, in the regions surrounding Europe, to the south, to the east and beyond, because in the presence of disorder and destabilization in these regions, then the security and the prosperity of Europe itself can be affected.